Hey, Redcasters, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. Go Big Red.
Welcome to the Go Big Redcast, the Husker Fan Sports Show.
Welcome, everybody, to the Go Big Redcast, a very special HuskHer Huddle edition, where I am joined by the voice of Nebraska Softball, Nate Rohr. Nate, thank you so much for coming on.
Happy to be on with you, Abbie, and fired up for the season. The team heads out bright and early tomorrow, and then they jump in the deep end of the pool against Tennessee. So we're going to get a pretty good look at this team early on.
I have to tell you, it just feels like spring hearing you talk. It's like, yep, that's the voice. That is it.
Well, hey, I'm glad to bring warmth. It hasn't been a battle this year around here. I know Rhonda Revelle has kind of marveled at how much time they've gotten outside, but somebody pulled the plug just as we're about to head out. So I guess we're leaving town at just the right time.
Yeah, that's something that I know baseball and softball both kind of struggle with, is this Midwestern weather in the early season, which is why we'll see so many away games and invitationals and stuff away for a long time until they come back to Bowlin, which we'll talk about when we get there. So yeah, welcome everybody. This is our softball 101 episode. We've done this for volleyball, we did it for basketball, we did it for soccer. So we're really, really excited to bring this. I think every time we do this, we get fun and new and exciting things. And we're just really excited to have you all learn a little bit about our softball team, our players, our coaches, just everything about it. And then the Big Ten with this addition of our Pac-12 schools of UCLA, USC, Washington, and Oregon. We see some new competition. And I think it'll be really interesting to see how that changes the dynamic of Big Ten softball. We've already seen it in women's basketball. And I think we're going to see some changes in the softball world. So really, really excited to have everybody kind of learn about that.
Well, I think the conference edition helped softball maybe more than any other sport in the Big Ten. I mean, when you add UCLA, you're talking about a perennial power, a team that starts every season thinking, we're going to Oklahoma City. Washington is much the same way, and Oregon maybe a cut below that, but they're not much below that. I think they go into most years thinking, we can win a regional, we can go through super regionals and maybe have a shot at the series. So we added 3 really good programs to this league. And I think having UCLA and having Washington in the league just adds to the cachet for everybody. Because if you get a win against UCLA, that carries a lot of weight in the softball world. So they were great additions.
They are, and think that's a great correction. I forgot USC does not have a softball team currently, so we added 3. But yeah, we played UCLA last year, correct? And it was that
in
and Oregon.
Cathedral City.
Yep.
And Nebraska actually plays UCLA this year in Cathedral City. They will play them out of the conference. But which, of course, in this brave new world of the Big Ten, you don't get to everybody. But yeah, we'll see UCLA. Nebraska goes to Washington this year. Oregon is not on the schedule this year, but of course the Huskers' last trip to the Women's College World Series was a super regional at Eugene. So I've got some fond memories from there.
That's awesome. I'm so excited. I know I played softball growing up, but rec league. Was not a very good softball player, but I played and we watched. But I would say, and I've said this about some other sports too, COVID did some good things, I think, for viewers in that it kind of forced a lot of, not forced, but it allowed us a lot more opportunities to get to watch these sports. And so, I mean, I'm still a relatively new softball fan in terms of watching a lot of it. So, so I know how we've been doing since the 20s, but it'll be really, it'll be exciting to hear some of the kind of older stories. That sounds bad, but you know what I mean. Some of those kind of past stories about teams that maybe a lot of our viewers aren't aware of either. So I'm excited.
I've seen a few games. Let's just say that. So
you guys don't understand. Like I feel like our radio, our commentators, you guys are all so good and you're all so knowledgeable that I've said this before, I will say it forever, and it is not just because you're on this. We are so lucky as Husker fans to have you guys as our voices for these sports because of the knowledge and history you bring. Sorry, I have a cat who can't decide
if she wants to be on the podcast or not, huh?
He would love it. He would just sing his song and it'd be amazingly terrible.
Oh yeah, sure. But yeah, we've got a great broadcast team. Starting with Greg, and certainly our thoughts are still with him, and of course Ken on men's hoops, and Ben McLaughlin, who's a very good friend of mine, and was a colleague of mine. In some sense, still is a colleague of mine, but we worked together more closely with the earlier iteration of the Husker Network. He does a terrific job on baseball, but then you look at the women's sports, and you're talking about John Baylor, who's done it for 30 years, and I don't know that people can hear a volleyball game not in his voice. And you watch for 15 minutes, and if you're sitting there on the couch, you drop a Doug like an archaeologist, or they're passing like kidney stones or whatever. And then Matt Coatney on women's hoops, and I mean Matt's done it for 25 years, and I've been fortunate. I knew Matt when I was in high school. He would cut. I worked at the radio station, KWBE in Beatrice. I'm from there. And for a time, Matt Coatney worked down there before I worked there with any consistency. Matt worked for that radio station some years before I did. And of course, in Beatrice, they have the Mudecas high school basketball tournaments, which Queeby would cover gavel to gavel. And so they would have the sports director, Brian Cook, at one site, and they would have Coatney at the other site. And then I would run the board back at the KWBE studios. So first off, I'm hearing Coatney doing high school hoops, which is great. And then he would come back, and he and Brian would visit, and I'd hang around as well. And Matt took an interest in me and would listen to my tapes. And give me advice, and has always encouraged me. So I will sing the praises of Matt Coatney on here as well as anywhere else.
Matt, so two things. One, you are so correct about John Baylor. So my fiance is a Purdue fan, but we went to, he hasn't listened to a lot of Nebraska radio until he moved in with me and was forced to, because I don't listen to the TVs. But we went to the volleyball championship in Louisville. And it didn't matter. Something happened, and I don't know if they served it out or something. And I looked at it and I was like, can't do it. Not the sport of volleyball. And he goes, every single play I hear a John Baylor. I pick up that thing. I love his euphemism. It's amazing. And Matt is, I'm with you. Like, in the few months maybe that I've gotten to know Matt, he continues to teach me so much about things and is so gracious with his time. You all are. So we are, again, so fortunate. And I hope all of our fans do fully realize that we're pretty special in that regard of who we get to listen to call our amazing athletes.
Sure. And I think it's just a symbiotic relationship between our fans love our women's sports teams. I think John, Matt have built that love, and if you've got a broadcast that holds your interest, you're more likely to stay with the team even when they're struggling, although volleyball never struggles. and women's basketball has been pretty good. But I think it's just one has fed the other, and I hope to be that for softball, and I'm the relative young pup of this. I mean, those guys were both established when I started, and I didn't just start, so.
Yeah, you guys are gonna have to stay forever. Sorry, we're just gonna AI your voices. That's awesome. I'm so excited to get into all of this. I've been so ready. Like I obviously love volleyball and I really I'm really starting to love basketball but I'm like, it's softball season. It's softball, baseball season. I'm so ready. It means summer's coming. And like you said, we have that history of our volleyball team being really good. Lately, our basketball team has really started to pick up and be consistently good. But our softball team is not a shabby little organization either. And so really stoked to get another strong season coming up for us. So yeah.
Well, this program has had a fun history. I mean, they were in the '80s. They were a power. They were a national runner-up. There was the dip in the late '80s, and then of course Rhonda Revelle has come back. And for the last 30 years, this team has been a contender, and this team's at kind of a high tide right now.
I love that. It just, not that we wouldn't support it, but it just makes it so much easier to watch and be supportive of a team that you can tell loves to play and love to play for each other. And then when you get to see that on-field success. So we are again so lucky. I could gush all day about women's sports in general and our softball team. But I think our viewers are like, that's enough, Abbie. We hear you all the time.
No.
So we will go ahead and get started. Similar to how we've done with our other sports 101s. We've created a little slideshow to kind of go over and have everybody meet the team. And some of these names will look really familiar. Some of our players we've had for a while. Some of them are big name transfers that maybe we as fans haven't gotten to see play yet. But so we're going to go through these. And if you want to just give maybe a little information, who to look for, their tendencies, something like that, just so we can also get to know them. So we're going to start with our catchers. So this is just from the roster that's on the website. So if some of them are wrong, just we'll say that and we'll make it, we'll update it. So starting with, I believe Ava Breadwell has been our catcher at least last year, but she's been our catcher for a while.
3 years. Yep.
Okay.
Last 3 years. Very good bat. She was the Big Ten Freshman of the Year. Her first season for Nebraska, the team that won the Big Ten tournament title, has always been a pretty good hitter and had a great year at the plate last year. 329 average, 8 home runs, always good power. Has battled some injuries throughout her career. And because of those injuries, she is still going to catch, but she's going to split time this year, and she is working in the outfield. And when I've chatted with Rhonda Revelle about her, she's mentioned that Ava's taken to it, and she has the athleticism. She's deceptively fast for a catcher, but the big thing is you want to keep her bat in the lineup. And if that means taking some workload off of her catching wise, that's probably for the good.
And when she splits time, it's probably with one of our transfers, or will she
Correct.
be okay, great. And we'll get to them. They're kind of
we'll get to the transfers. Yep.
Yeah, yep. So that's kind of so Ava is the one. Yeah, if you look at this list between Ava, McKinley, and Hayden, probably haven't heard much about McKinley and Hayden. But what can you tell us anything about them that maybe if we do get to see them, we could look out for?
Well, first off, both McKinley and Hayden are great team women. They're people that work very hard in the bullpens. You need as many catchers to catch bullpens as anything else. McKinley could factor in some at third base. They were considering her. Her bat just hasn't quite come around enough for her to be a factor in the starting lineup day in, day out, but she's one of the co-captains. And, great, like I said, an elite sort of presence for this team, beyond what she can do for you between the white lines. And Hayden's a terrific kid as well. They're both I'm not gonna. None of these kids that I've gotten to know have been bad. You would be hard pressed to grab 20 people off campus to better represent the University of Nebraska. The 20 or so, and this year we've got 25 on the softball team. But these are 3 really strong people and good people in the clubhouse.
And it must be. If you're named a co-captain, but you're not, like one of the starters or a big name or something, that has to say a lot about, your role on the team and what you mean to that team. So that's great.
Yeah. She's just important to this team, far beyond what she can do with the bat.
It's great. And we need those, like you said, on a season as long as tough as ours are, that mental and that mental component or that teammate component comes in just as much at times.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So now we get to our infielders who we know all of these. We know all of them. We've seen Bella and Samantha. It's weird calling them by their full names when you don't hear them by their full names.
Oh, sure.
And then Caitlin. So the roster only has them as infielders, but they obviously play very specific infield positions, correct?
It can depend. These three, yes. I mean, sometimes when somebody has infield by their name, it's because they could go to several positions. But in these cases, and if this ends up not quite being the case, don't hold it against me. But Bella Bacon has played first base basically her whole career. Caitlin Kaneda has played second base, and then Samantha Bland was an outfielder last year, but by trade she was an infielder. She played infield, high school, club ball, and she is going to take over at third base for Sydney Gray. And Sammy is athletic enough to get the job done at third base. I think she has enough of an arm to get the job done over there, and the bat is there. She can hit at this level. Caitlin Kaneda at second base. Yeah, and she started the last 2 years, and yet I think she's in a pretty pitched position battle right now with the Kamensons, with Lauren Kamenson. And so that's going to be a battle, and I wouldn't be surprised to see either Kaneda or Kamenson at second base when the season begins. When Caitlin's right, her bat is really good. And she's fairly athletic over there at second base. And then, Bella Bacon transfers over from Purdue, decent defensive first baseman, hit reasonably well, but you hope to see some growth there. And I know Purdue was kind of a tough spot the year she was there. The coach ended up getting fired, and so there's all sorts of turmoil that you can extrapolate from how that ended up. And so you're hopeful that now a full year of playing at Nebraska and getting to train with this HuskHer coaching staff has brought Bella's bat along. But, she, at the same time, she came through in a couple of big spots for Nebraska. I think of the Iowa doubleheader when she had the walk-off hit. I mean, so that's a bat that will be valuable in the lineup for Nebraska. I will say, though, she'll split time at first base some of the time this year.
Oh, okay. Now, how often, I'm trying to think of how, compared to other sports, is it common to have that different kind of lineup, not necessarily game by game, but maybe weekends or things like that? You think like in volleyball, you maybe get one or two changes in players from game to game. Is it pretty common to say look, we have two really good third basemen or third base players, they might switch, different weekends or different games?
So the tendency has not been to do that. Okay. It's a mark of Nebraska's depth, especially with the hitters, that they feel like they've got some flexibility. I think Bland at third and one of the transfers at short that we'll talk about in a little bit, you can pretty much pencil them in for every game. And there are players who will have a spot every game. But after that, there are going to be position battles. There are going to be platoons. There are going to be a lot of moving parts with this team, especially where you have a couple of pitchers like Jordy Ball, who's going to hit every game. And then you've got somebody like Kylie McGee, who isn't going to hit at all. And so you have to make compensations for that. So we're going to see more lineup fluidity with this Nebraska team than I think we've ever seen. Rhonda Revelle, when I talked with her, talked about we could be using 14, 15, 16 players a game because of the reentry rules. And for those, watching this and getting their introduction to softball, while there are a lot of similarities between how baseball and softball are run. The big difference, and the difference that you're going to see a whole lot with softball, especially this Nebraska softball team, is you get one re-entry. And so you can take out a player, substitute for them, and in baseball, they'd be done. Whereas in softball, for example, if you've got a pitcher who isn't much of a hitter, you can still put her in the batting order, and then she pitches her game. You pinch hit for her the time she comes up, and say she pitches 2-3 innings. Pinch hit for her when her spot comes up. She pitches 2 or 3 more innings, and then you take her out. But you don't have to take her out after the first pinch hit. A place where you see a lot of subs is pinch running. So there are a few players on this team that aren't as fast as others. And so you can bring on a faster runner in circumstances because you know you can bring that bat back once.
Gotcha. Yeah, that was going to be a question that I've asked because that is so different than in baseball. And so I can never remember how many times that you can kind of switch those players and then when. And so that's really helpful to know. So you could see a pinch hitter, but that player that they're hitting for can still come out and finish their kind of fielding game.
Oh, they can come back. They can come back and even run. You'll see this sometimes where, especially somebody toward the bottom of the order, say it's an RBI situation, and you've got someone at the bottom of the order who's more of a speed hitter, but you're looking for somebody to hit a double in the gap to score all 3. You bring on your power hitter, and you let her hit, and ideally she gets her hit. Then you re-enter that speedy person, put her on second base, and continue from there. So, and again, Nebraska typically has had a pretty set lineup. Rhonda Revelle has not platooned much. She has not, switched back and forth a whole lot. But she's told me that she's going to sub quite a bit with this team because she has the pieces to do it. Because she has a lot of bats and a lot of abilities that she wants to get in this lineup.
That'll be fun to watch for. That'll be really fun to watch for this year. So there's a thing, Husker fans, keep an eye on that. Let me ask, Nate, what does platooning mean?
Okay, so platooning, and you use this term in baseball, softball. So you see it more in baseball, actually. So you've got a position where, let's say, you've got 2 second basemen, and one of them hits right-handers very well, but can't hit left-handers very well. The other one can hit left-hand pitchers very well, but cannot hit right-hand pitchers. And oftentimes, the guy that can hit right-hand pitchers bats left-handed. The guy that can hit left-hand pitchers bats right-handed. So you platoon them to where you're using them in matchups specific to their skill set to get the best out of both of them. And you'll see, like I said, you'll see that some in softball. You won't see it as much because, unlike baseball, softball, because of the pitcher usage, you don't know who's going to pitch. You can make guesses. You can sit there and say, okay, we're the toughest team they're going to play this weekend, so they're going to throw their best against us. Or they play 2 games, and the team that they play earlier in the day is better than us. The odds are decent. We're going to see there too. But teams in softball are notoriously secretive about their lineups. I mean, where baseball, they'll get the lineup hours before the game. Softball, the rule is 30 minutes, and there are plenty of coaches that run the lineup up to the press box 30 minutes before first pitch. And there are some coaches who push that. So I call those coaches my least favorites. Of course, Rhonda Revelle, in her infinite wisdom, distributes the lineup among the team the night before, usually. So thankfully, my coach ain't like that. But there are some that Nebraska plays that seek to drive me nuts. So.
So rude. We won't name names either, but you know who you are. You know that. No.
Feel shame.
I'm gonna watch for that and listen for it now. And there's gonna be your
Yeah, you'll probably be able to hear it when, well, this lineup just handed to us. Leading off.
We're gonna start.
I
We're gonna
guess
start
it's somebody.
we're gonna start some guesses on Twitter about it.
There you go.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. I had never heard of the term platooning before, but that makes total sense of how that work and then the purpose behind it and why. I also didn't know softball coaches were so sneaky with some are so sneaky with their lineups.
I mean, there are coaches. Go to like Oklahoma's softball website. Oklahoma, the program in college softball, 4-time defending national champions. Try and find their season statistics. Try and find Washington's season statistics. Yeah, there are coaches that hide them. Again. Yeah, you're telling me.
That sounds like that sounds like a really fun deep dive that I'm going to do one day when I've got time. I know my brain is already doing that. Like, okay, what are we going to go find?
Yes.
Well, I'm glad we're not. I like being able to keep up with our statistics for the season and this season. It's almost like it gives you something, again, like kind of this nerdy like data side of me. It gives me something to look for in the next game of like, oh, so-and-so hits, at this level. Anyway, I'm glad.
Context. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So now we move on and knowing that we're missing a former outfielder in, was it Sammy, who might also still play outfield. Some of our other outfielders, who's again, some names may sound familiar. Dakota Carter, but is it Alina?
Alina Felix, yeah.
Awesome. Abbie Squire, great name, great spelling, love her.
Malia Tomes. Malia.
Malia, I love it. And then
Talia Tokheim.
Talia. See, you can't put those two names next to each other and pronounce them differently.
No, now that you list it that way, it is a little funky.
So Abbie we've had for a while. She had an injury last year, correct? And redshirted. Malia did really well. If I remember, I'm remembering some of the games of her hitting. Those are the two names that really stand out to me as outfielders. What can you, because we lost oh gosh.
Brooke Andrews graduated. Caitlin Neal graduated. The losses were the greatest from the outfield. So we'll start with Squire. So Abbie had a great year, and I'm doing the math in my head, and this is 2022. Had a really great year for that Big Ten tournament championship team. And then 2023, she became a captain, but she was also hurt. She had a hip injury. She had her back. And so she was less than 100% and gutted her way through it. And played through the 2023 season, but her production suffered. And so the decision was made after 2023 for her to have surgery, for her to sit the whole year. And she's back in the lineup, a good hitter, very athletic, covers a lot of ground in left field and kind of a daredevil out in left field. And also another important captain, leader, voice in the locker room. I mean, she's not a huge, loud presence, but she talks enough. And I think has the respect of her teammates, a really hard worker. She was somebody I didn't have huge expectations for. Through her freshman year, she played some. She didn't play a lot, but really made strides and really played her way into the lineup. And so you're hopeful that after taking the last year off, she's able to have the senior year she deserves, because she's a very hardworking kid and I think it's been really important to this program, both with on-field and off-field production. Dakota Carter, another one coming off of an injury, and you're hopeful that she can find her footing on this team. She was behind a stacked outfield her first year, her freshman year, and then last year was down with injury, and I think has a ways to go before she's able to crack the lineup. So you wonder what her role is going to be during the season. Alina Felix, very athletic, a pretty good bat, but again, somebody that it just felt like she's kind of stuck behind, at least the first couple of years of her HuskHer career. She was stuck behind some players that could do a little more, and when she would get her chance, there were times where she'd succeed. She just really couldn't seize it the way she kind of needed to in an outfield where the commodities were pretty established. Malia Tomes last year, pretty good bat off the bench, and we talked about all the ways that you can use your bench in softball and the liberty you have in using your bench in softball that you don't quite have the same way in baseball. I think Malia Tomes is going to have a huge role for this team, and I don't know that she'll start many games. I think she is, in talking with Rhonda Revelle, getting ready for this season, she's a big-time bat off the bench. She handles pinch hitting very well, which can be a really difficult thing because, you're talking about sitting on the bench, sitting, watching, getting cold, not being a part of the game, but you have to stay locked in mentally. And you have to do what you have to do to get yourself loosened back up and back in there. And in talking with the HuskHer coaching staff, Malia's able to do that. Pinch hitting is a very kind of discrete set of skills just beyond being a good hitter. And by all accounts, Malia has them. Talia Tokheim's a player that's very interesting to me because she has battled injuries throughout her HuskHer career, missed most of last year with an injury. But boy, I like her bat. I really like the way she hits. And she can hit for power, she can hit for average. And so she's somebody that if she can stay healthy and get back up to speed, she could really help this HuskHer lineup. And the other part is if she's able to pinch hit, she could be a real dangerous bat off the bench too.
Pitch hitting also, so admittedly, I told you I played a little bit. I was not a good hitter. That is a skill that I do not have. If I could have had somebody hit for me all the time, that'd be great. But you think, especially with pitch hitting, like you said, you've kind of sat, you've gotten cold, and you're being brought in probably for a very specific reason. And so even like that pressure that comes with it, there's always pressure when you come up to hit, but if you think you're a pitch hitter, it's like, okay, we need you specifically for this. This is it. And so that's to be good at that, to essentially, I feel like to be told like, this is going to be your role. That's gotta be like, I think everybody would love to start. You have to wonder if there is some of that that's just like, okay, there's some belief there then that I can do this when they need me to.
Yeah, it's a very discrete set of skills, and they're not bringing you on with nobody on and two out. They're usually bringing you on with somebody on base expecting you to do damage, and you have to deliver. So it's a mind game, no question.
Yeah, so that'll be fun to watch that. Again, this is a question that will come up about who will need to step up on offense, but it kind of sounds like everybody is going to have to, and that we've got a lot to look for from our bats this year.
Absolutely.
All right. So now we move to our pitchers. And so again, these are our current / had been there before pitchers, which we all were so excited and then so just deflated when Jordy came and then got hurt right away, it feels like. But obviously Jordy Ball is here, and that's amazing. And then we have Emerson and Caitlin. And Emerson and Caitlin, we both watched pitch last year, if I remember correctly. So we as fans didn't get to see a lot of Jordy Ball as a pitcher at Nebraska. We did get to see, you can see her pitch at Oklahoma. But other than Jordy Ball, what can we expect from Jordy and these other pitchers this year now that they've had, Emerson and Caitlin were freshmen, so now they've got another year under their belt. What can we expect to see from these pitchers this year?
Well, with Jordy, I'll be interested to see it, especially early on, and I expect her to start the season opener against Tennessee because the question with her is, can she come back? When we saw her pitch in the fall, she would look very good for about 3-4 innings and then tail off because she just wasn't back to 100%. and that was November. And so the feeling is that by now she's full go, full gas. That's what we've heard from Jordy. That's what we've heard from Rhonda. Can she sustain that against high-level competition? I think that's the big question. Will her body allow her to sustain that against high-level competition? I don't want to make it sound like she's not capable of it, because she her stats speak for themselves. She absolutely is. But will the body do what the mind is asking it to do? And I feel pretty good about the odds of her being able to do that. We just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
And coming off a major injury like that, you don't know where that is. But you're talking about a power pitcher. You're talking about somebody who expands the zone, especially north and south. Okay. She can do it east to west, but north to south, rise balls, change ups. That's the good stuff with her. Emerson Cope, interesting, really really wasn't expecting to pitch last year. But had to step in and was up and down. I don't know that she performed at the level at which she would want to, but was able to get some experience. Another year of college softball will help her. The coaching staff says she's really developing her pitch repertoire very nicely, and so she can be somebody. I don't know that she factors in as a starter, or at least a frontline starter, but she can pick up some innings for you. And then Caitlin Olensky's an interesting case. She suffered a torn pectoral last year, right as conference play was beginning. She's not going to beat you with velocity. She's going to beat you with command. She's going to beat you with movement, miss hits, the quintessential crafty lefty when things are going right. So that's what those guys are going to do pitching-wise. Hitting-wise, Jordy's in the lineup pretty much every game, if not every game. And it's going to be at the top of the order. She's one of the fastest players on this team. And a secondary draw for her to come to Nebraska is the fact that Nebraska is going to let her hit. And she has the bat and the capability to do that. So it'll be interesting to see, okay, how does she sustain hitting throughout a college season? But line drive power, somebody who once she gets on the bases is pretty exciting. I mean, Oklahoma used her as a pinch runner, and it was because she was one of the fastest on the team. Emerson Cope has tremendous power, and it will be a question of how they are able to get her in the lineup. Because if she's not pitching, she profiles as first base DP type, and you already have some options there. By the way, Jordy is learning first base, and so when Jordy's not pitching, she'll play first base. Cope, I think first base or DP would be where you have to slot her defensively, but she has elite power. She has some thump, and so can they find her at bats? Because if they are, I think she'll be able to make a contribution. Caitlin's a pitcher only, so what she does is in the circle. But those first two, you expect to get offensive and pitching contribution.
And that's another place, like obviously they're not the same sport, but that's another place where softball and baseball are so different. It's not unexpected for pitchers to hit as well, whether they are pitching or not. Like it's not, I mean, Courtney was another one who, when she pitched, also hit. And so is it just, what do you think that difference is? Is it just because the shoulder movement isn't the same, and so they are capable of doing both?
So I think baseball and softball are at different stages of specialization, because, you think about youth baseball, high school baseball even, very often the pitcher hits. And in fact, high school baseball rules are similar to college softball rules in that the designated hitter can, quote unquote, pinch hit for any position on the field. So you can have a player in your lineup that plays a position other than pitcher and still have the designated hitter. So having that substitutional flexibility helps. I think where softball pitching is underhanded, you don't need as many pitchers. And so, although that is changing, you know, when I started covering this team, usually they would have two pitchers, and that two pitchers that on whom they could rely, and maybe a pitcher they were developing. And right now, you need at least two that you can feel good about starting in conference games and expect to win with, and then at least another one or two to at the very least pitch midweek and take innings off your staff. So softball is evolving closer to where baseball is in that respect, but at the same time, it is more common it's far more common in softball to see somebody pitch and hit as opposed to just pitch.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that was one thing when I first really got into it that it was so different of like, oh, but why is she hitting? Isn't she pitching this thing? So that's really fun. And it's great that we gave, it's great that we gave Jordy the opportunity to hit, whatever it took to get her back home.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's really fun to watch that then from her on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, and this coaching staff has always liked having a pitcher that could hit. They haven't always had it.
Mm-hmm.
Peaches James and her career hit. Ashley DeBoer didn't do it much, but she did it some. Tatum Edwards was pretty much a strict two-way player. Emily Lockman was a pitcher only. So they have done both. But this coaching staff certainly is happy to have and may in fact encourage two-way players, pitchers that can hit, and they'll sure let somebody try to do both.
It's awesome. It's again, I wonder if that's similar to having, well, when we get, I think the very next slide are our brand new players. So players who play, athletes who play multiple sports, maybe not at the college level, but you just think like that added athleticism to be able to do both.
Or understanding of the game from both perspectives. If you're a hitter, you know what's tough for a hitter to handle. So you can take that knowledge back with you as a pitcher and say, okay, I really don't like that pitch in that location. Let me throw it to the other guy.
Yeah. It's such a mind game. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Absolutely.
So our next couple of slides are our brand new HuskHers this year. And we're starting with our incoming freshmen. One name everybody or anybody who has watched women's basketball or watched our basketball show will recognize. But the rest, I just want to point out that out of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 incoming freshmen, 4 are from Nebraska. That's I didn't know Nebraska was a softball sport or softball state too, but we really like our homegrown girls.
One tweak. Macy Vickers is from California.
So did I get the wrong place?
But 3 out of 5 ain't bad.
3 out of 5. Yeah, it's pretty good. And call me out that way, Nate. I feel good.
Yeah, I'm sorry. But it's notable that the next recruiting class is all in-state kids from the metro, and even though it's not volleyball in terms of talent production in the state, I do think softball in the state is having a bit of a moment in terms of producing elite talent. Whether it was Jordy Ball, you've got Ruby Malin, who's down at Oklahoma State after transferring from Washington. You have Groff, who was an All-American last year at Southern Illinois and transferred over to Omaha. And so there are great players being produced by this state. And, we've seen Jordy Ball's return, the return of the Kamensons, Casey Hoffman coming back. It's nice that they're all starting to gather back at Nebraska.
It's always nice to keep those kids home. If you can keep the homegrown talent, I know that it's that thing where all schools think that, but it feels so salient for Nebraska fans to be like, if you're good and you live in Nebraska, we would like you to stay, please.
Yes, yeah. It hurts you more when you lose a great player and they go elsewhere. I think of Tara Oltman going to Creighton instead of going to Nebraska, and that bugs you. Or you see it like Noah Fant when he went to Iowa instead of Nebraska. But there's something about being a Husker, an in-stater. It matters to you in a different way. And notably, 2 of our 3 captains are in-state kids.
It just means more.
Yep.
That's the wrong.
It just means more.
Oh, gross.
Indeed.
So Nate, of our incoming freshmen, I think, did I read that Carly is going to redshirt?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, we went through those catchers, and we've not even gotten to one yet. And so the catching position's pretty deep, but she can redshirt and develop a little bit.
Great.
I think at bats are going to be tough to come by for Macy Vickers as well for that reason. No discredit to her, but right now Nebraska's got really good depth at catcher.
Yeah. Are we expecting? If you had to guess, do you expect most of these incoming freshmen will either redshirt, or do you think we'll see much of them given the depth that we already have and the experience we have on the team?
The freshman to watch would be Nessa McMillan out of Blair. Really rangy outfielder, can cover a lot of ground. Very good defensively, and the coaching staff's been really impressed by her work ethic. So you feel like she can continue to develop as the year goes on. Natalia Hill could also factor in if she puts together a nice late charge. And I think we'll see Kennedy Williams in spots and in a role, perhaps pinch running. I feel like she's getting her legs back under her, and when she's right, her speed is elite. But McMillan would be the one that I would expect to get the most time of these 5. And she could factor into the starting lineup in the outfield because I just think, from what I hear from this coaching staff, the speed's there, and she can cover a lot of ground in the outfield, and of course in center field, that's what you're looking for.
That's awesome. We have a slide about her coming up, but it's great. It's always nice. We have a big team. You mentioned that we put 25 people on our squad this year. So right, that playing time is going to be limited a lot, but it is always nice to see that we're not just getting people and then just sitting them, right? Like it sounds like this coaching staff want to use them if they, are able to be used. And so it's a mentality that I've really appreciated about our especially our women's sports, of like, we're not just hoarding talent. If you're coming here, we want to use you.
And it represents it represents a shift for this Nebraska coaching staff, because for a long time they had really small rosters for precisely that reason. They wanted to have roles for everybody. And again, because of the increased specialization inside of softball, because of injury issues, and this team had more than its share last year, they have moved toward a bigger roster, but it feels like Nebraska is going to do as good a job as anybody of utilizing as much of that roster as possible.
That's good. Love to see that. All right. So then our last group of new Huskers on our team are our transfers. And it's a pretty big transfer class this year.
Yes, it is.
Trying to put all these together, and was like, oh my gosh, another one more. So we've got it's Kamenzind. We'll get used to that.
Yes.
The Kamenzind twins, both transferring in from Arkansas. We have Olivia DiNardo from Arizona, Casey Hoffman, also from Arkansas. Ava Cusack. Oh, I like that name already.
Excuse me, Cusack.
Cusack coming in from a Big Ten team, Wisconsin. And then Kylie McGee coming in from Arizona State. So again, if you're looking at this list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 transfers, 1, 2, 3 of them are from Nebraska. So we all 3 played for Arkansas and then came back. See, it's good. It's a good pipeline. So what can you tell us about what to expect from these new Huskers? Obviously, they came to play, but what role do you see them playing this year?
Well, let's start with Olivia DiNardo, and I've alluded to her a couple of times this year, or a couple of times in our conversation. Olivia's going to be the one that splits the time with Ava Breadwell behind the plate, and DiNardo just has elite power. A very good hitter. She'll be in the mix immediately. She'll start probably every day, splitting time between catcher and designated player. But she'll be a factor in this lineup. Day one, heart of the order, big RBI producer, big power hitter. Casey Hoffman missed all of last year with an injury, but she's another big-time power hitter. She projects to start in one of the corner outfield spots, probably right field, but just another power bat that Nebraska was able to pick up from the portal. Hannah Kammensen, I think, is going to see quite a bit of time in the circle. Whether she's the 2, whether she's the 3, I'm not quite sure yet, but she'll be a factor in the circle. She'll get pretty regular work pitching for this team. She's a ground ball artist, drop balls, stuff low in the zone. Lauren Kammensen's going to be a factor at second base. We talked about that earlier, battling Caitlin Kaneda. And again, when we get the lineup Wednesday night, Thursday morning, it wouldn't shock me to see either Lauren Kammensen or Caitlin Kaneda at second. It could go either way. Ava Kusak's your starting shortstop.
Okay.
The bat is there. 318 hitter last year for Wisconsin, 9 home runs, athletic, good power, can hit for average. And then Kylie McGee's kind of a wild card here because McGee missed all of fall ball with injury. But I think this coaching staff really likes what she brings to the table. She was slowed by injury last year at Arizona State. But they feel like she can really do some good work for this team. And, if she is right, she can really factor into the front line of this pitching staff. And one other thing that I think is important to note, because you always worry, all right, we're bringing in people from Arkansas and Arizona and Wisconsin, Arizona State. How do you mesh everybody together?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there were ties to each of these players from where they play club ball. I mean, the Omaha girls, that's obvious, Hoffman and the Kammensens. But like Ava Kusak, she has family in Omaha and would play club ball in Omaha. So even though she's from Colorado, she's got plenty of Husker red in her. Olivia DiNardo was a club teammate of Talia Tokheim. Kylie McGee was part of the Corona Angels program that's been so good in Nebraska over the years. So they all had a hook. They all had a way in. And so that will bring them into the team culture quicker, I think. And just from what you hear from the staff and from the players, that's already happened. But, you might worry in a normal situation. All right, at-bats are going to be a rare commodity this year for a lot of people. Innings are going to be a thin commodity. And so as people battle for those, would there be infighting? Would there be disunity? Well, the fact that they already had ways in and it was easier to integrate them to the larger whole, I think leads us to believe that there's a smaller possibility of that happening than you would normally think.
Yeah, it sounds like they may be, especially if you already, they have the connections or the inroads, probably already have an idea of what the team philosophy, the team culture is already like coming in. And so, you think like if one of them, and not that any of them have obviously, but like if one of them had the mindset of like, well, I'm here to be the alpha, I'm here to be the one, they would kind of already know that that's probably not the vibe of this team and that's probably not going to work very well for them.
Exactly. So that'll make it easier to plug them all into the lineup, and then they can get down to the business of playing.
That's what we're looking for because we got no time.
Nope.
2 days. Let's go.
Yeah. And you know, the thing is especially for Nebraska, because you worry a little bit about the Big Ten's profile
Yep.
cachet, you've got limited chances to make your mark, to play your way up into being a regional host, a super regional host. I mean, they play Tennessee this first weekend. They play Texas Tech, which is nationally ranked. They play Mississippi State, which is nationally ranked. Oklahoma State down in Wichita, UCLA in Cathedral City. So you've got to have things as pulled together as you can in the non-conference, so you don't dig yourself a hole. And so it's important. That's important to have really early on as a team.
Yeah, not a lot of leeway for this team to really get their feet under them.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we'll kind of quickly go through just to review who our coaching staff is, and then get to just some of the kind of bigger picture Big Ten 2025 type things. So we'll quickly go through Rhonda Revelle, still our coach, an amazing coach, our 33rd season. I did not realize that she is our winningest coach in Nebraska athletic history, men's or women's sports, with over 1,000 wins in her career. Seems good.
Yep, that's not bad.
Not bad at all. She's been coach of the year in 3 different conferences, all at Nebraska, Big 10, Big 12, Big 8. She's third most NCAA tournament appearances among active D1 coaches. And she's led us to 3 Women's College World Series appearances as a coach, and was a member of the inaugural Women's College World Series team in 1982 with Nebraska. She's got an idea of this postseason thing.
Yes, she's seen quite a few NCAA tournaments, and you know, as John Cook's retirement has brought about an assessment of him and what he's meant and how he did it, you know, it's important. The thing that extended John Cook's career, I think, was his adaptation to today's athlete, because there was a point in 2015, 16, whatever, where it was still really good, but he wasn't quite reaching that top level. And it's so important for coaches to evolve and to understand the picture around them. And I think Rhonda Revelle has done a good job of that, especially the last few years of evolving and really clicking with the athletes and the players that she has now, and understanding the landscape as far as transfers, and being able to rebuild this program after Nebraska softball hit a hole in the late 2010s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a thing with, obviously, with social media kind of exploding, and female athletes in particular really utilizing social media. It feels like we're learning a lot more about some of these teams and some of these really high profile teams. And you can see if your coaches aren't evolving to kind of be where their players are, you know, it's not going to work out. And I think that's a really good point, especially just within the last 10 years or so, how Rhonda has changed her approach and to coaching, to leadership, to how, you know, the team leadership, both being the leader and having the player leadership go on. And it's always good to see. And like you said, it's similar to what John Cook has done, just learning from each team that she has of what does she need to do to help them be successful. One thing she doesn't need to do, or she's learned long ago, is to keep these great assistant coaches that we have, which was such an awkward segue. It works. No. Lori Sipples, our associate head coach, from reading her bio, mostly a pitching coach.
Yes.
Kind of primary. Okay. She's been with us since 1990, and my math refuses to let me believe that was more than 10 years ago. Yeah. But what is a member of the Nebraska Athletics Hall of Fame. She also played at Nebraska.
Arguably the most accomplished Nebraska softball player of all time, and rare is the opportunity to have the greatest to do it for your program, coaching in your program. Rarer still is to have that person as an assistant in your program. And you know, Lori has been sort of Rhonda's the big, passionate personality, and Lori's been kind of the steady one, and has really led this pitching staff. I mean, the mark of Nebraska softball historically has been great pitching, and Rhonda Revell's had plenty to do with that, but so has Lori Sipple, and she continues to drive that forward.
Yeah, and I am not going to read off all of the things that we've accomplished with our pitching over the years since Lori has been our coach. But if you go to the softball page, the softball HuskHer page, and go down to coaching and just look at the coaching accolades, the pitching notes, the playing accolades, it's amazing. I never knew. Like, I did not realize how good our pitching staff has been, like, historically under Lori. So we're very fortunate. We've had, I think I read that between Rhonda, Lori, and Diane Miller, we have one of the most continuous coaching groups. I don't know the best way to say that.
Coaching staffs, yeah.
Yeah. And all very successful in their areas, in their kind of specific coaching areas.
Right.
Which leads us to Diane Miller, who, again, reading her bio, kind of a hitting specialist, kind of a hitting coach, really focuses there. She's been on our staff since 2008 and is part of the Missouri Sports Hall of Fame. So all kinds of Hall of Fame athletes coming back to come help us help coach this team.
Yeah, and Miller has driven this offense forward. Also has been very important in recruiting, not to say Sipple and Revell have not, but connects very well with the athletes and really, for a long time, and even the first few years of covering this program, the thought was, well, if we get 3 runs, we're going to win. But are we going to get 3 runs? And under Diane Miller, that's been less and less of a question.
Yeah, very similar to Lori. If you go on and look at Diane Miller's page, the offensive notes, the accolades, it's astonishing. It's astonishing what she's been able to help us achieve. And like you said, we average, I'm looking at it right now, more than 5 runs a game in 7 of the last 13 full seasons. That's amazing. And in softball, we know that's not always easy to hit against some of these teams.
Right.
All right. Then our assistant coaches, or Olivia Farrell, former player, is our assistant coach, and she's been here for a couple of years. And then Allie Light is our graduate assistant this year, and she pitched at both Arkansas and San Diego State. So we all remember Olivia Farrell. I do anyway. I saw her name and I thought, oh, yes, I know this one.
Yeah, and Liv was part of that and really front and center in the recent renaissance of Nebraska softball as a captain on that Big Ten tournament championship team as a senior, really set the stage for the recent success of this team, and was benefited from the fact that they opened up a 3rd assistant coach spot in college softball and baseball. And then Allie Light, somebody that I've not had the opportunity to get to know yet, but Nebraska's gotten good work out of their graduate assistants over the years, and I suspect they will again with Allie.
It's always nice, I think, to have those very recent players. You have to imagine that helps a lot too. If we talk about kind of relating to the current players and the current kind of era of softball, having these people who are like, yep, we've been there, we understand. We talked about it, I think it was either in the basketball or volleyball show, of like, not only is it I've just recently played, but Olivia can say, I've played under Rhonda, so when she says this might be what she means. It's kind of a nice interpretation sometimes for other players.
It's a step between. It's a translator. It's somebody, which is not to say Olivia doesn't have her own good ideas on how to coach or whatever, but she can relate to that younger player and help them understand what Rhonda and Lori and Diane are getting at.
Yeah. Which I think, especially if you're first time playing college softball or first time in a big program like this, can sometimes be a little bit of a culture shock almost of like, well, what do they want? So I really, again, I like this. It feels like every sport we have a former player who's on our coaching staff to really help with that. And I love that is continuing through softball.
And Nebraska, 3 of their 4 are former Huskers.
Yeah.
Full-timers.
That's amazing. It's so great. And I hope we keep, again, it's that you keep your in-state kids here, you keep your players here. There's a certain passion that comes with having grown up and been a part of that system that I think is really beneficial.
Sure.
All right. So that's our coaching staff. The last thing that we kind of want to go over is some of the preseason talk and then getting into some preseason conference talk. We have 1 preseason All-American, not surprising that Jordy Ball is a first-team preseason All-American. I think I spelled that wrong. I don't think that's Nessa, is it? It's Tessa.
No, it is Nessa. You got it.
Did I get it right? Okay. I was
got
like,
it.
I don't remember that. All right. Well, Nessa then, which is who you talked about, is on our preseason freshman to watch list, which is great. There's so many phenomenal players that at first I thought, should I be surprised that we only have 1 preseason All-American? And then I thought, nah, probably not, because there are just so many talented players out there that even getting 1 is pretty phenomenal for us.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing to worry about. It doesn't keep you from winning. And you also feel like, well, there are a lot of transfers on this team. Maybe people are being reluctant to buy in until they see how they settle in.
Yeah. I learned that from the basketball talking with Matt of like, you can't get too hyped up about these preseason lists. They're called preseason for a reason.
Yes.
we got a whole 2-3 months to go. So
sure.
All right. And then our preseason polls, there are multiple ones. I think the D1 softball is probably the one. That's where I pulled a lot of my stuff from. So we are ranked in 4 different preseason polls, anywhere from 14th to 21st. Do you feel, I mean, I know you're a little biased. Do you feel that's accurate?
Right now, I feel like it's pretty close because I think the talent is there for this team. And hey, if the best 2 rankings are right, that means you're hosting a regional. And I think the talent is there for this team to do that and maybe more. But I do understand the posture of, hey, we've got to wait and see how this thing all comes together. Yeah. And is Jordy Ball back to 100%? You know, are the other pieces back to 100%? Can they assemble a lineup? Can they get everything to mesh? So I think the rankings are fine. They might be a touch low, but you'd rather be too low than too high. And I think it also reflects sort of a caution about buying into a northern team and a team that has a lot of new pieces too early.
Sure. Yeah, that makes total sense. And I am with you of like, I would rather be maybe under the radar. I know we're not really under the radar. We're
right.
ranked, but it is nice to kind of be under the radar, not have quite as much pressure as saying like UCLA, who is preseason ranked number 4. So going on that, there are, according to this D1 softball, 6 Big Ten teams ranked this year preseason. So UCLA at number 4, Nebraska 14, Oregon 18, Northwestern 19, Michigan 20th, Penn State 25. Are there any of those that are surprising to you, or anybody surprising not to be ranked preseason?
Well, under normal circumstances, I would say the absence of Washington would be really surprising, except they lost 8 out of their 9 hitters, and they lost everybody who threw a pitch for them last year. There was a real mass exodus, and I don't know if it was just people having a problem with the change in conferences, if it was, some of that, some of graduation, and it was. There were some graduations, there were some transfers out, but Washington lost some really huge pieces from last year. Of course, Ruby Malin, their great pitcher from Omaha, went to Oklahoma State. Their shortstop, Riley Holtorf, went to Florida. Brooklyn Carter went to Baylor. Alana Johnson went to Texas Tech. So they were really ravaged by the portal. And so, Washington under normal circumstances, I'd be surprised about, but, because knowing what I know about what they lost in the portal, I guess I'm less surprised. Penn State might be the one that sounds kind of funny, but they've got a great pitching staff, and they bring most of it back. They were a regional team last year, and I think Clarissa Corral has done a really nice job in building that program, and they're on the rise. So again, if you're coming in with kind of a casual understanding of softball, Penn State has not been a great program before, but they've been coming, and they continue to build. And so the fact that they're ranked this year is not a surprise.
Gotcha. And so we had a question come up that
Sure.
put it on the screen. If you're watching, you can see it. If not, I'll read it off from Eric Miller, who wants to know who are players around the Big Ten that softball fans will want to watch. So, Nebraska, we know we've got Jordy is the big one. We got Nessa to watch as a freshman. But who are some, if we're going to catch some other Big Ten games or when we play our Big Ten conference games, who should we be on the lookout for this year?
Well, Kelsey Nader at Northwestern is probably the best returning hitter, right fielder for them. Hit 375, 8 home runs, 32 RBIs. I think there are a couple at Michigan that really catch your eye. Ellie Sealer, who's their starting left fielder, 341 average. Hit for some power last year. Laura Durkowski, their pitcher, is another one that folks ought to keep an eye on. So those are the ones from the mainline Big Ten. Of course, that leaves out UCLA, which, UCLA, they had some pretty substantial losses, but they do bring back a couple of their better pitchers, Caitlin Terry, Taylor Tinsley. So they've got some material on that pitching staff. And they added a transfer, Jessica Clements, from Cal Poly that hit 464, and I got to think she'll be a factor in that lineup from the jump. So that's a starting point in this conference. This was a conference that was hit pretty hard by graduation last year, whether it was Nebraska, whether it was Northwestern losing Ashley Miller. Really, the one team that didn't get hit hard was Michigan, and yet they're toward the bottom of the D1 poll. They're not ranked in the NFCA poll, and I'm a little surprised by that because the Wolverines, they had a bumpy first year after the retirement of Carol Hutchins, but they pulled it together, and they were pretty good last year. I mean, they go 2-2 in the regional. They win 40 games. They had a good year. They bring back a lot of good material. I guess I don't get why people have sold on Michigan so quickly.
Yeah, that might be another one. I wonder. Well, no, because you just said they didn't lose, so that is odd. It's not like they're let's see how the new team jives. That's good to know that they maybe that's a sleeper team. They're
a little underrated in my eyes.
Awesome. Well, we have just a few more minutes, and so we're gonna do just a couple quick questions for you, maybe.
Sure.
What game this season are you most excited for?
That's a good question. I would say probably, Dare to Dream, the UCLA game in Cathedral City. Nebraska challenged them last year, lost to them in walk-off fashion. And for folks who don't know this, Cathedral City, California, it's right by Palm Springs. And that's where the Mary Nutter Collegiate Classic is. And that's one of, if not the top non-conference tournament in softball. And it's hosted by UCLA, and a lot of the Southern California club teams come out. So it's essentially a UCLA home game. And so it's always a great environment to play the Bruins there. And the Huskers played them tough, and you feel like they'll have a great chance at them this year. So give me that game, with apologies to the Northwestern series. Even though last time we went there, they ruined my scorebook, and they still haven't built their new stadium yet. But this is their last year before they essentially tear down and start over, which they needed to do 10 years ago, but I'm glad they're doing it now.
Yeah. Story of Northwestern athletics, it seems like.
Yeah, no kidding. Spend on your teams.
Invest, please. So what, if you can think back to maybe one or two in your history of calling softball games, what have been maybe one or two of your favorite games that you've called?
So 2013, the run in the Super Regionals against Oregon, especially Game 3. First off, just to go to the Women's College World Series, Oregon had won the Pac-12 that year. We were in the number 14 national seed, so I mean that was good, but it wasn't. Nobody's picking us going out there, and Nebraska wins the first game, lose the second in heartbreaking fashion, and you felt like, well, maybe our chance slipped through our hands, because as the underdog there, you want to sucker punch the big guy twice and get out of there. But Nebraska bounced back, won Game 3, and to make it to Oklahoma City was really satisfying for me. The regular season game I would pick was the next year. Because Nebraska, first round of the Women's College World Series, lost to Washington, extra inning game. The next year, Nebraska plays Washington in Fullerton, California, on the side field. And both teams brought back most of their players, but the Huskers are on the side field against Washington. Both teams recruit Southern California extensively then and now. And so stands are packed. You've got a little of the bad blood from the year before. Washington has a 1-0 lead on the Huskers going to the bottom of the 7th, and Taylor Edwards is due 4th in that inning. And Nebraska couldn't touch Washington's pitcher. Kiki Stokes reaches on an error to prolong that inning to hand it back to Taylor. Then Taylor just crushes one over the left field fence. So that's one of my favorites. I would say the game against Wichita State in the regional in Stillwater a couple of years ago is up there as well, because they had our number, and the Huskers
was that
walked
the one
up.
where, that's right, yeah. I was gonna say, isn't that the one where Abbie, was it Abbie or was it not Abbie? No, was it Brooke or Billy? One of them like hit the Oklahoma State, like the big wood mascot, right?
The Pistol Pete.
Yeah.
Beyond the left field fence. Yeah, that was pretty cool. But Wichita State had our number that year and had really been a pain, and to knock them off and end their season was very satisfying. And then the other one that I would think of is beating Michigan when they were number 1 in the country, beat them with a double play. In 2016, I think. But yeah, those are the ones that stand out. Just at first blush.
Yeah.
Get me throwing pens here. It's already.
You're just so excited about it. I mean,
believe me.
Well, there you go. I mean, Husker fans, as we wait 2 more days, holy cow! I keep saying it, and I can't believe it. As you wait a couple more days to start the season, there are a couple great games to go back and rewatch. I am sure. If you can't find them on BTN Plus, they're probably on YouTube somewhere. I'm sure we can find a version of them. Go back and watch some of those classic games and just get mentally ready.
Yes.
Because we're about to start a whole new sports season. And I'm so excited. I love the beginning of this. I love the beginning of a season because you just don't know. And that's scary as a fan, but so excited to get back into it. Nate, thank you again so much for coming on and for talking about this team and these players and your experiences. We typically end the show, I think I told you, with what we call a parting shot. So as our guest, I will let you go first.
Well, my parting shot would be, this is going to be a lot of fun this year. Be patient early, just because they're trying to fit pieces together. But I think this could be a really special year for Nebraska softball, so excited to be a part of it, excited to describe it, and I thank you for giving us some time to talk about it.
Oh, man, Nate, I would talk about this all day long if I could. If I didn't have to go back to my real job right now, I would just do this all day. So my parting shot, again, I've said it multiple times, but thank you so much for being the voice of softball, being such an enthusiastic voice of softball, making these games so much more fun to watch. I really appreciate that and all the work you do for that. And second, to our fans, go to Bowlin, go support our softball team, go see something special. I get hyped up on the Kool-Aid so easily, so much all the time. It's, super regional or bust or whatever this year, but go support these ladies. They are a phenomenal team to watch. I got to watch them a couple times last year. They're just a lot of fun. So if you can go and just continue to support our female athletes and Nebraska. I think we're really special in that regard of multiple sports we show up for.
Yep. And they're going to make it worth your while this year, I think.
I'm excited. I'm excited for it. I can't wait. Let's go.
Oh, yes. I'm people keep asking me, are you ready? No, I am not ready. I'm excited, but I'm not ready yet.
I know. Well, how much oh God, I feel like I just want to open a whole new can of worms and we don't have time for that.
Fair enough.
We'll have to have you back on at some point, Nate, to go over some other things if that works for you.
I'd be delighted to do it.
I appreciate it. All right, everybody. That was another episode of the Go Big Redcast. Thank you again so much for tuning in. And again, thank you, Nate, for giving us so much of your time today. Thursday, February 6th, in 2 days at 6 p.m. is going to be the Nebraska-Tennessee game. And let me pull this up real quick because I'm doing the very Midwestern goodbye of not being able to say goodbye. It looks like you can watch it online, but we'll put that information out to see if there's another way for us to watch it. But until then,
it's on the radio.
That's it. Always listen to the radio. Always sync up the radio.
Yes.
All right, guys. And this is another episode of the Go Big Redcast. I got to find my banner. Oh, this is really good.
A Herd at Sports Network production.